Ania Redzewska. I hope that I will honorably replace Elin Hamso, who has been conducting you and who was your online guide for those 2 last days. Now he's on the way to Luxembourg, but I'm with 2 other brilliant gentlemen that actually have just finished a session. Before the title of the session and the objective of the session, the names of the people who were responsible for the session. So Ruud Janssen, I think you may give your description of what
of the session.
First of all, of what you are doing, because what I noted is that you want to be called digital strategist and nomad, which is very interesting in context of social media, but maybe we will just stick to this. And Andreas Diesenreiter, who is creative director at European Society of Radiology. Good afternoon. And as I said, we've just left the session that these 2 brilliant gentlemen organized. The title of this session was actually quite complicated. I will try to be as calm as possible while reading it. So, live autopsy dissecting user-generated content at association conferences. And happily, we were already explained at the very beginning what was the objective of this session. So the question that we were about to answer during 2 hours of this session was, does user-generated content may create value for all event stakeholders? Yes, no, if yes, for whom and how? And I think I will pass the explanation of the whole concept of the meeting, of the session, to my guests, and I think I will ask first of all Andreas, who was the author or co-author of the project that we were actually trying to get closer to, and we were trying to think about during the session. So why actually you've come up with this concept of this kind of action, this kind of activities, and why it's now interesting so far that we've been working on that for last 2 hours.
Do you mean me being rolled in as a corpse, or do you mean the projects I had?
I mean about the project. I mean about the project. The project that was so much involving users. Mm-hmm. So attendees. In your case, it was a meeting. It was a conference. It was International Radiology Congress. No, I mixed somehow the name.
European Congress of Radiology. Yeah.
Exactly.
And if we frame the discussion, we're at the end of a 2-day conference, and one of the discussions and the design that we were thinking about is we're talking about user-generated content. Let's frame the session using user-generated content. Let's make sure some of the content actually comes from the users, and we live what we describe, and we dissect the success and some successful failures of an event that was just past month in Vienna, right, Andreas? So maybe you can describe how we kind of came up with the concept and what we did within the session.
Well, one of the interesting things for me was that you wanted to do an open session. So I wanted to have, what were you calling it? The thing for all people?
Yes. When you have a hard time walking, PowerPoint is very often like a support system for speakers to hang on to.
And I wanted to have like a PowerPoint presentation where I can hang on, presenting all my projects, but Ruud convinced me about doing the whole session, well...
More interactive.
Yeah, more interactive. So we just chose like 7 projects I thought that are interesting for the others to see. Some of them worked very well, some of them who, well, didn't work out, to have like a mixture of projects. And then we posted them and asked people which projects they want to see and learn more about. We did that with pictures. Maybe I show some of them.
Yeah.
So it was pin to win. So generally, all of those projects were social or social media actions around the Congress. It's European Radiology Congress.
More or less, yeah.
Okay. So because I was one of the attendees, so I may also see it from attendee perspective. So we've seen all of those pictures. We were about to choose them, what we want to talk about, what was interesting for us, and actually you invited us to talk over those projects why they were successful or not, why, and what was the most what was interesting for us, and what we can implement in our actions.
Correct.
So why actually have you chosen this kind of format to talk over this kind of project? I mean, there is some link.
I have
between
to
the format and
admit
content.
that when we would have done it with PowerPoints, I wouldn't have found out that this is what people interested the most, because I would have thought that, well, probably he would have won, but, well, it seems that the word game is enough to get people's attention.
Because it's about the gaining.
Yeah.
And the winning.
Yes.
People want to win.
Yes, probably.
So just to kind of frame it, what we did is we replicated literally something that people recognize. And this was user-generated content from another conference where some good colleagues of mine, Erik de Groot, designed a session where we dissected the meeting owner. And this kind of inspired when we're talking about a medical conference, how do we dissect the user-generated content at an event that was just held, and how do you determine whether it delivered value for the stakeholder, yes or no, right? And what do scientists do? They make a hypothesis and they prove it, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
So we took the scientific approach to seeing whether something that's very crowd-owned, right? People create their own user-generated content with videos and photos and all sorts of things. And
Actually, you use this radiological
Yes.
attitude.
yes.
You
And so,
just want to try X-ray.
so we go into the mode of what is commonplace of care for the audience here, and because people in the associations world that is the audience here very often have to do with academic environments.
Yeah.
That's the reason why we chose this hypothesis and literally had the patient be carried in or be driven in actually.
Which was Andreas, so like 2 hours ago he was on the
which
table
was inspired by
lying.
this design session that Eric designed back at the Fresh conference in Copenhagen, which was very interesting because it creates this tension in the room, this common place where people kind of figure out, okay,
we are in different settings,
it's different.
something
I have to
is
think different, something's different, there's paper all over the tables, we have different components, we have to do something. It's not just sitting back and consuming a PowerPoint. This is the last session, right? We were standing between the beautiful ocean in the back here and the actual content delivery.
And
right?
try to grab the attention.
And I
out
think
of
this is
promotion.
exactly what we did. We said
Yeah.
apply the live autopsy principle to this concept. People chose which projects they wanted to do. So these were put on the table of the dissection. And they chose which ones they thought were the most important ones, just by looking at a picture. Right? That's all
So
they
it was
saw.
another element of user-generated content.
Absolutely.
This was
Which
our
had,
input.
which had a different outcome from Andreas' expectation, maybe. And I think this is
Completely.
typically what you experience, I think, when you allow others to give components of the decision, right, on the direction, then you can physically, from that component, you can create the program and change the program as you go along.
Throughout,
Yes.
throughout the
And we started 10 minutes early. My mistake. I thought we had to start at... and then we did a quick rewind because this is a linear process in this meeting. What we did is we mapped out on a timeline, on one wall, we put up the timeline of 3 years with months. And as we went through the cases, we were talking about and taking notes on Post-its and pasting, when did you take the decision, when did the idea come up, how did it materialize, and kind of dissect every component in that way, which would be an analytical state of mind, right? And Benita Lips, who was our chair for the session, pointed out that this is the type of qualitative research that we were conducting on this particular event with some of the creators on the inside and some of the people on the outside that observe it and then come up with new ideas and convert it to ideas for yourself.
Yeah.
And then at the end we did a lineup, whether we agreed or disagreed with the hypothesis, and then interviewed the people that were standing on one extreme and the other extreme to see what the learnings were.
So I will ask you already what were
Yes.
the results, as I wasn't there. So it
Well,
will be
a video has just been posted on Twitter. So if you look at the Twitter hashtag ACIE13, you will see some of the commentaries of people that were just there.
Okay.
And it's fascinating. I think when the definition of has a scientific approach, in this case, the word all was our struggling point, and that's the reason why we put it in. User-generated content creates value for all stakeholders, right? And we emphasize the word all. That is not something you can prove absolutely just from 70 minutes of interactive discussions and very
with even the most professional people possible to find at one place.
and in practice the whole exercise is done to get people to think and empathize with the situation and think about this problem from their own perspective. Another ingredient we drew into this was we had so much content, sometimes you need to think about something completely different. And we brought in some chocolates from various places in the world, and little papers are put into Matryoshka dolls, and all these different components had a way of distracting people to think about something completely different. It's a palate cleanser to cleanse your mind and literally think about something different so you're ready and receptive for the next piece of content.
So you wanted to feed us, but happily not with sugar. So our attention, our span attention was still
There's a little bit of sugar, but most of it is
just
origin chocolate with cocoa on the inside.
And it's pure.
It's very pure. This is a product only chocolatiers can procure and buy. It's still a very rough product, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're analyzing rough content.
Yeah.
Yet people, chocolate is usually a food group for most people. It's also something that usually in large groups of people, there's very few that dislike chocolate. You were asking before, why not mint or a drink or something different? Because it's hard to find a product that everybody really likes and is looking forward to the next one. Chocolate does the trick every time.
Yes, yes.
Can we please have milk chocolate next time?
More chocolate.
Milk.
Milk chocolate, yes. So the other component was people have different preferences in chocolates. And then you demonstrate the fact that tastes are not the same, right? You may like this chocolate, somebody else may like that one.
So you cannot talk about all. You may talk about minority, majority, but you cannot satisfy everybody.
Yes. If you blend all the tastes together, you get something reasonably mediocre. What you have to do is try and test extremities, right? You try things that are, that some may like, others may dislike, but that's the way things go.
How did you find, actually it's a bit far question, but did you find us distracted by the chocolate? I mean, from
you
your
were a
point
participant, let us ask you.
I was searching for a second bottom, and I was like even asking, okay, why are we actually eating this chocolate? And I was like, okay, what's the context between Austria, Vienna, and chocolate? I was missing Mozart balls, but so now I'm happy that you revealed it. I don't know, maybe you left it for our thinking afterwards?
I think a good story always leaves you thinking, right? If you resolve all the problems at the end, or halfway,
too obvious,
then it may
too
become
easy.
too obvious.
Yes.
The imagination needs something to bring along. The other thing we ran into was maybe interesting was we asked for permission to extend with another 10 minutes. And then you said, no, cannot be.
And now I actually ask whether we can stay a bit longer, just a little bit. Okay, so because I would like to wrap up actually what we have been doing for the last 2 days, and I think you are one of the most appropriate people to talk about it, because very hybrid events and this content not only consumed by attendees, but also generated by attendees, and searching for their feedback before, after, throughout the conference actually is highlighted more and more, because people see that actually you cannot create something for people without them.
Yes.
So my question is, what are your thoughts? In which direction is it going? In which setting you think that we may meet next year at Association Congress? Is it some?
Yeah,
is it
I'm going to do the following. It's maybe not fair, but I'm going to bounce the ball through to Andreas, who's visited this conference for the first time.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
So I'm going to put him on the spot briefly, because I think getting the fresh perspective of somebody that is in an association environment, in a specific creative role.
And not in event environment, or not directly event, throughout the association.
Correct.
Yeah.
How do you perceive this event, and what's the direction that you see going? What's its relevance to you?
So if the question is what I think how the event will change for next year, I probably have sad news, because my opinion is that it probably will be nearly the same, because especially in social media, I mean that's something that's going on now for several years now,
Yeah.
and it's evolving very slowly.
Okay.
From my perspective.
It's a slow, organic growth.
Too
or change.
slow, not slow enough, or it's just statement. It's slow.
It has two ways of going. On the one side, it's moving very quickly. I mean, it's how it's developing, for example, if it was just Facebook and the features Facebook integrates constantly and the redesigns Facebook has. So that's moving very quickly. But on the other side, we have this very slow pace in the conference and Congress business and the adaptation of users. So there's a very different speeds. Well,
and we have to manage to kind of digest them at once and mix them and have the best product possible at the time given.
And when the slower group is catching up, the other one is already again, far away, and then we still have to again refigure what to use for the slower group again. So that's
something to be looking forward to. And with this statement, we are going to say goodbye. Thank you for being with us. Unfortunately,
and we
you
can
will
have
not
some chocolates, and we do apologize
we
if
will
you're
share
just
with
looking
you
at us from the
virtually
outside.
from Costa Rica, Peru, and Uganda.
Yes.
And yes. So thank you for being with us on behalf of Ellen and on behalf of me. See you next year.